Alright, hello YouTube. So, as you could probably imagine by the title, I am continuing once again with the readings. So today I'm going to be reading Chapter 4 and Chapter 5, and yeah, so let's get this thing done. Chapter 4. Inger stood watch by the great golden door. Over the mountains from the east, the first rays of the sun snuck over the peaks. The sky was cloudy, and a slight chill pervaded the air. Inger shuffled his hooves, trying to muster some warmth back into them. His wings were numb in the high mountain cold, and he fancied he could feel frost on his cherry-red feathers. It would be winter soon, he thought with a grimace. Inger hated winter. The snow was wet and unpleasant, and the frigid air made flying difficult, and the fire wings lived for flying. In times of peace, as now, the fire wings served as Her Majesty's royal guard. It was in this function that Inger found himself outside the warm castle at the crack of dawn, watching the door for intruders. He didn't mind, though. It set Her Majesty's mind at rest to have the firewings with her, and Inger would gladly walk 50 miles through snow 10 feet deep for the reward of her smile. She smiled so rarely these days. He just wished that guard duty wasn't so tedious. But perhaps it would be an eventful morning after all. Up the steep mountain path that led down to the city of Canterlot proper came a cloud-gray pony. Inger watched, intrigued. The pony reached the bottom of the huge set of stairs that led up the side of the mountain to the castle gate. He started climbing. He must have run the whole way up the path. From Inger's perch next to the gate, he could see the pony struggle up the stairs while gasping for air. He had something in his mouth that Inger couldn't quite make out. Well, more and more interesting. As the pony neared the top of the steps, Inger discovered that he had a set of wings. Curious, why not just fly to the gate? The stranger kept struggling up the stairs, taking them two at a time. As the pony finally reached the top, his brushy brown hair caught the wind and blew aside to reveal a stubby horn. Inger's face hardened. That explained the reason for not flying, at least. A pegacorn. The pegacorn reached the top of the steps and collapsed. He panted heavily, trying to catch his breath. Inger watched dispassionately. At last the pegacorn stood, shakily approaching the tall golden door. Inger stepped forward, spreading his wings. In his gold-inlaid ceremonial armor, the firewing was an imposing sight. "Halt, stranger!" Inger eyed the creature with distaste. "What is your business in the Castle of the Sun?" "I have," the pegacorn gasped, "a message for the princess. Urgent." Inger looked him over. Short, or perhaps stunted was a better word, and covered in dirt and sweat, the pegacorn cut an unimpressive figure. Wait, not all dirt, Inger's eyebrows raised. There was blood on the pegacorn's hooves. "What is the message?" "Can't tell you. I don't even know myself. It's for the princess's eyes only. I need to get this to her. It's urgent." Inger's eyes rolled. Princess Celestia is an extremely busy pony. All letters must be submitted through the proper services. The post office is open during weekdays from 9 to— No! The urgency in the pegacorn's voice drew a frown from Inger. "Right away. Now, please." "Look, kid," said Inger, dropping all pretense of civility. "Celestia doesn't need to be bothered with whatever problem you have. Either put your papers in through the correct channels or—" "I don't need to be bothered with what, Inger?" The guard swirled around, instantly dropping to a deep kneel. "Milady!" Princess Celestia stood in the open gate, her hair flowing gently in the breeze. The grace and power of a true alicorn stood in stark contrast to the pale imitation of the creature in front of them. "What is going on here, Inger?" she asked politely. "Nothing, ma'am. Just an intruder on the grounds. Not a problem." Inger stood and turned back to the pegacorn, who was staring awestruck by the presence of the princess. "Begone, stranger." The pegacorn stammered. Princess Celestia." The princess inclined her head gently, smiling encouragement. Inger stepped before him. Between them, his wings flared up. "You'll not bother Her Majesty, peasant." His eyes narrowed. From behind him, Celestia giggled. "Oh, Inger, you're so fussy. Let him by. I don't mind, really. But, milady, Inger, I always have time for my subjects." Celestia gave the guard pony a knowing smile. "Tell me, little one, what is your name?" She turned to the gray pony, and barely contained a gasp. Wings. And a horn. So little, so small, so vulnerable. Luna. Tears sprang to her eyes. She realized her mouth was hanging open slightly, and closed it. The little pegacorn shuffled his hoof and stammered out his name. Rye Strudel, your highness. Strudel? What twist of fate could bring Winstreak's child of all ponies to my door? I have a message for you. He panted a hoof to a letter at his feet. From Dawn Sparkle. His face suddenly closed off, revealing no emotion. Dawn? She's my most faithful messenger. What would she... Celestia's eyes widened. Dawn was her most reliable courier and scout. That's why she'd been assigned to keep an eye on the situation on the Griffin border. Celestia took another look at the pegacorn and saw the faint bloodstains on his coat. The cheer drained from her face. Whatever brought this pony to her, she knew with terrible certainty that this message would shake her world loose from its moorings. In a voice of deadly seriousness, she said, Come with me, Lil Rye. Inger, you as well. We'll go to my private chambers. But, milady, no arguments, Inger. Now. Yes, milady. The three ponies set off into the castle. Inger motioned to the interior door guard to replace his post outside. Celestia led the way, and Rye trailed behind, trying to make himself as small as possible. They traveled through the castle, past the council chamber and the great hall. Rye could smell cooking from the castle's kitchen through the hall, and his empty stomach rumbled sympathetically, but Celestia whisked past without a glance. They came to the bottom of the tower stairs leading to Celestia's chambers, and he sighed. I've really had about enough climbing for one day. The minutes passed as they rose up the stairs. They ascended in silence, Celestia's urgency carrying them up the tower. When they finally reached her room, the door swung open and Rye found himself in a circular chamber. There was a comfortable rug filling much of the floor, patterned with sun sigils and maps of stars. A fireplace on the far wall provided much appreciated warmth, the flickering light casting an orange glow over the room. Celestia's bed, a grand four-post piece of furniture, lay in disarray as if some pony had twisted and turned all night under the sheets. Celestia turned and the door slammed shut behind them. Rye, give me the message. The pegacorn obediently set the message on the ground at her feet and stood back. Inger watched with growing concern as she grabbed the missive and frantically ripped open the red seal. Her eyes scanned down the letter, absorbing its contents. Oh. Her eyes grew large. Oh no. She continued reading. 10 minutes passed, neither Inger or Rye daring to move a muscle. At last the princess closed her eyes and curled up the scroll with her magic. She spoke in a pained voice. How did this letter come into your possession, Rye Strudel? Dope. Oh crap, hold on. Okay, here we are. Sorry. Lost my place for a second. Swallowing, Rye began in a shaky voice to describe the events of the night before. He told them how he had woken in the forest. Rye neglected to mention his reason for being there, but thankfully the princess didn't press for answers. And his encounter with Dawn. Rye told them how the griffins had attacked her. Griffins? In the Contail Wood? Said Inger. Celestia silenced him with a look, then motioned for Rye to continue. He mumbled a brief description of the battle and found his voice caught in his throat. Brokenly, he stumbled over Dawn Sparkle's last moments and her urgent request. I couldn't bury her. I honored the body as best I could. His eyes stared at the floor. Beside him, Inger shifted uncomfortably. Thank you. Celestia's eyes closed and she gave an infinitely weary sigh. Dawn was a brave soul, one of the best friends I have ever had. I will see to it that her family is notified, her husband and children. After a moment, she found her voice again. But there are more pressing matters. Rye and Inger looked up sharply. Celestia now paced restlessly, speaking to them in a low and intense voice. Dawn's letter is the report I requested on the Griffin Army's strength and movement. It's worse than I feared. They are mobilizing. Dawn tells of forces from all over Griffa traveling to a great war camp on the equestrian border. She speaks of thousands, tens of thousands. We don't have the military strength to repel such an assault. Rye shifted uncomfortably. He had the unsettling feeling that he was viewing Celestia in a role few ever saw, not the kind, gentle princess, nor the amenable peacekeeper of the council, but the shrewd ruler of Equestria who later planned centuries in advance. Rye half expected the princess to tell him to leave at any moment, letting her talk in private with her guard, but she said nothing. They have enough soldiers to easily march through the southern plains unopposed, enough to crush Whitetail's army in any single battle. Inger broke in. How can they feed that many troops? Griffa is a desert, nothing grows there. You forget, Inger, about their last campaigns. After the Great War, the Treaty of Sel-Palas created several minor nations to surround the remnants of the Empire. They were supposed to contain the Griffins. Celestia sighed. Instead, they have proven easy pickings for Griffin expansion. Miles and miles of land have fallen under their king's control, and now he wants Equestria. Her eyes hardened. He cannot be allowed to have it. But the national army is only a few thousand strong. We are weak. Weaker than we have been since before the war. Rai stood silently, trying to process this. He was really starting to wish the princess would let him leave. The disturbing thought came to him that he was being made privy to her inner council. Why? This was getting weirder and weirder. Inger spoke, a hint of worry in his voice. Surely the celestial army will not stand alone. What of the provinces? I have no doubt that Bel would eagerly leap into battle with the Griffins, Inger, but Blue Blood is firmly set against war. The situation is delicate. If the Griffins move into Whitetail, Celerity may well attack with or without our support. And if we declare war, it is doubtful that Emmett will send aid. He concentrates too much on solidifying his own power base. He still feels that now is the time for the noble class to reclaim their former glory. Celestia snorted. Old fool. He lives in the past, but his delusion is dangerous. Rai spoke hesitantly. But, Your Highness, you're the princess. Can't you just order him to step in line? Celestia gave a merciless laugh. One of the great ironies of power, little one, is that the more of it I have, the less of it I can use. If I pressure Blue Blood too heavily, he will complain that I do not give the provinces enough leeway in their governance. The nobles will protest, and the council will be locked in an argument until the Griffins kill us all. And if I demand that he march to war, he would destroy everything I have worked for. He would succeed. The Norhart Duchy is the second largest in Equestria, and I know many smaller provinces that would follow him if he decided to separate. That would spell absolute disaster. Equestria would find itself locked in a civil war between Norhart and Whitetail, with Canterlot caught in the middle, and the Griffins would swoop in to clean up the mess. Hundreds of thousands of ponies would die in the fighting, innocents and soldiers alike. It would be an unmitigated disaster. No, we cannot risk open war yet, not while Blue Blood still remains opposed to it. But Your Highness, Rai said, almost desperate, you are God. Can't you smite the Griffins with your magic or something? Celestia's face darkened. The last time Luna and I rode into battle was eons ago. We fought the dragons at the beginning of the world, striving for dominance over the new creation. Fire and magic steered the sky, destroying mountains and rending the land in two. We broke the natural cycle of the weather, and to this day the Pegasi suffer for it. We disturbed the orbits of the sun and moon, and so we must raid them ourselves. Her eyes filled with fire. We were victorious, yes, but we nearly destroyed the world in the process. The flames in her pupils dimmed, and she looked gently at Rai. Luna and I knew that we could never risk such utter destruction again. We removed ourselves from the world below, and rested in the sky. We gave the duty of raising the celestial bodies to the unicorns and departed from the earth. She seemed lost in memories. We returned only when a great enemy threatened to destroy the fledgling nation of Equestria. Our battle against him was great and terrible, and all of creation might have been lost, but in the end the world was saved. To prevent another such evil, we have ruled Equestria as your princesses for millennia, doing our best to safeguard the ponies and other creatures under our care. Turning back to Rai, she said, I dare not unleash that magic again, for to do so a third time might bring about the ending of all we know. So now, Rice Rule, I must work through mortals. At this she gave the Pegacorn an odd look. Yes, through mortals. Celestia's voice trailed off as she went deep into thought. Inger stamped his hooves impatiently. Milady, we don't have enough troops to defend against this invasion. We need allies. Yes, Inger, I concur. But who? The dragons still slumber in Wormgrant, and they would not aid us in any event. The zebra tribes are too far to send help in time, and the buffalo would be more likely to fight for the griffins than us. What about Sleep Nord? Celestia and Inger turned to Rai. He shied back, nervously. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. My friend was telling me about Sleep Nordic culture the other day. It just leapt to mind. The princess put a hoof to her chin. The Nord ponies have long been allies of Equestria. Surely you cannot be serious, said Inger. Our nations may have been close once, but that was hundreds of years ago. The Nord ponies have gone incredibly isolated. Besides, those savages are too busy killing each other to gather an army, and I would be wary of letting any Nord pony warrior set hoof on equestrian soil. Celestia frowned. You give them too little credit, Inger. The Nord ponies are valorous and unmatched in battle. She nodded slowly. Yes, the more I think about it, the more this seems the correct course of action. We must send a messenger to the Thane to secure their aid against the Griffins. Inger restrained his frustration and sighed defeat. Very well, m'lady. I will summon a courier. No, said Celestia. We can't send an official courier. If they are being watched, if Dawn Sparkle's fate is any indication, and the greater danger lies within. If Blueblood or Belle found out that we were securing an alliance with the Nord ponies, I fear that an all-out civil war is all too likely. Celerity feels much the same as you regarding the Northerners, Inger. No, we need to send an outsider. She looked calmly at Rye. His eyes bugged out a little. So that was why she hadn't asked him to leave for this conversation. He stammered. Me? Princess, I'm not, I mean, At the same time, Inger erupted in protest. You can't send him! Celestia held up a hoof, quieting them. Trust me, please, both of you. This is the best course of action. She gazed evenly at Rye. He felt very small. In a formal, regal voice he had never heard before, she spoke. Rye, we ask you to travel to the northern lands of Sleipnord and gain the support of the Thanes. The road is long and dangerous, but the security and well-being of all Equestria rests on your success. Will you do this task for your princess? Rye thought long and hard in that moment, pondering the last 2 days' events. His failure at the field, his foundering search for a purpose, his encounter with Dawn. He looked back at his flank, seeing the olive branch proudly emblazoned there. He nodded slowly. I will. Inger spluttered. Milady, I must protest. You can't give a mere fowl a task like this. I'm not a child, snapped Rye. Inger ignored him, still fuming. This is ridiculous. We can't afford to send an untrained civilian alone on a mission of such importance. And I am not, said Celestia evenly. Her voice returned to normal. You're going with him. The red Pegasus gaped, still gibbering. The princess nodded. Yes, I will make the preparations. You both leave tomorrow. Your Majesty, beg pardon, but... Rye gulped. How exactly are we going to convince the Thanes to help? Celestia's horn glowed white, and a set of scrolls appeared in midair with a crack. These are copies of the ancient treaty signed at the end of the war. The Nord ponies agreed to join us against the threat of the Griffin invasion if ever it should arise. These treaties will bind them to the word of their ancestors. She looked kindly at Rye. I'm sorry, Rye. You must be very tired. You haven't slept since the attack in the woods. Inger, please show him to the guest rooms. I need to plan. I will see you after the council session. Return here once you're done to collect the treaties. Yes, m'lady. Still simmering, Inger bowed deeply. He nudged Rye, who followed suit. The two exited the chamber, the door magically sliding shut behind them. As they walked down the stairs, Rye paused. She kept calling me Rye. Does she use the first names with every pony? Yes, said Inger, though his expression was still irritated. His voice grew rapturous as he spoke of the princess. Her Majesty cares about every single pony under her rule as if they were her own children. Do you see, now, why we follow her? Rye thought back over the encounter. Yes, he said quietly. Yes, I do. Alright, so that is the first chapter that I'm reading, number 4. So, enjoy a small little interlude, I suppose. Alright, and back from that little break, which I kinda needed. In any case, let's continue on with Chapter 5. Chapter 5, alright. Windstreak paced anxiously back and forth. Apricot, he's been gone all day and all night. I'm starting to worry. Dear, he's not a little colt anymore. I'm sure he's fine. Apricot carefully lowered the pan into the oven, eyeing the loaf of uncooked bread carefully. He shut the oven door and turned to his agitated mate. I know. But you know how down he's been. You saw the mirror upstairs, said Winstreak darkly. I'm just worried he'll do something stupid. Ah, said Apricot with a dry smile. Now that sounds a bit more like Rye. No doubt he'll show up sometime this afternoon, covered in mud and smelling like a barn. The bell on the front door jingled from the store beyond the kitchen. Apricot furrowed his eyebrows in annoyance. We're not open for another hour. Did I forget the sign again? The two ponies walked into the storefront to see an olive-green pony clad in the dark red leather of the Celestial Army. He had 2 saddlebags slung over his back, each filled with rolled-up letters. I doubt he's here for the pastries, love, whispered Apricot. It's probably for you. Winstreak nodded and approached the military pony. Captain Winstreak Strudel, of Her Majesty's Fire Wings. She snapped a quick salute to the soldier. He returned the salute grimly. Captain, my apologies for intruding. I have a message for you. Winstreak raised an eyebrow. And it warranted a hoof delivery from a uniform? That's not my decision, Captain. So what's the message? The green pony pulled the letter out of his bag. He handed it to the blue Pegasus without a word. I need to go. I have several deliveries today. Goodbye, Captain. He saluted again and sped out of the shop, the bell ringing behind him. Winstreak unrolled the letter and quickly read it over. Let's see. Her Princess, Razor of the Sun, Ruler of Equestria, etc., etc. Ah, here we go. Presence is requested and required at the castle. All fire wings called to active duty. Stand at full readiness. Winstreak looked up at Apricot with a shock on her face. They're calling us in. All of us. But you're on leave, began Apricot unhappily. Not anymore. I've been ordered to report to the Princess directly with the rest of the unit. Urgent priority. The Princess wouldn't call us lightly. Winstreak's face was filled with fear. In fact, I can't remember the last time the firewings were all ordered to alert like this. Do you think... the rumors? I've heard them too. Winstreak was grim. They say the Griffins have been building their army. But they wouldn't dare attack Equestria. Apricot's frowning concerned. Would they? I'm sure not. Or, I'm not sure. I hope not. There hasn't been a real war in Equestria for 600 years. If Griffa really is invading... She swallowed. Her face filled with regret. The last time this sort of mobilization happened, we were assigned all the way down in Cloudsdale. I'm sorry. I know we'd planned to spend the rest of the month together, but this is too important. Apricot sighed. Yes, of course. Equestria comes first. Winstreak grabbed her mate in a hug. He smiled sadly. Go save the world, honey. She smiled tearfully back. I love you. All right, I promise. Tell Rye where I've gone when he returns. Of course. All right, I need to leave immediately. I'm sorry, the letter was very clear. Don't worry about it. I'll finish setting up today. The two shared a kiss and Winstreak turned to leave. Remember to get the loaf out of the oven. I will. The bell jingled and she was gone. Apricot sighed and returned to the kitchen. He knew his wife loved the firewings, but he hated whenever her duty took her away from family. Regretfully, Apricot began to dust off the counter to prepare for the store's opening. The bell rang again. Forgot something? Asked Apricot. He looked up to find not a blue Pegasus, but a pink earth pony. Oh, hello, Cranberry. I thought you were some pony else. Hello, Mr. Strudel. Cranberry looked cheerful. Is Rye here? No, I haven't seen him since yesterday afternoon. Oh, yes, I met him in the marketplace. Apricot's heart eased a little. He hadn't vanished off the face of the earth, then. Perhaps Rye was just hiding somewhere in one of his funks. No need to worry. He thought about the shattered mirror upstairs. Cranberry, if you see him again, please tell him to come home. I'd like to make sure he's all right. Sure thing, said Cranberry. I know you're not open yet, but... Apricot smiled knowingly. Here. He pushed a fresh muffin toward the pink pony. Yay, muffins. Oh, thanks, said, around a mouthful of muffin. Cranberry muffled. Oh, see you later. She left the store, ringing the bell for the 5th time that morning. Apricot sighed. The firewings had been called to duty. Rye was missing, and the weather looked dismal. What else could go wrong? Rye sniffed. His eyes shot open in alarm. Bread! He dashed for the kitchen, opening the oven and choking on a thick cloud of black smoke. Okay. Rai woke from a disturbing dream involving pastries with teeth, shaking his head and promising himself never to eat a biscuit again. He looked around, finding himself in a small bedroom. The carpet was a soft red, and the walls of smoothly chiseled stone. Beams of morning light shone in through a small window on the wall to his right. Where am... Suddenly, the memories of the day before came back to him. He lay quietly in his bed for a while, processing the strange turn of events that had befallen him. No pony to royal representative in a single night. I just wish I knew what I was doing. There was a knock on the door. Rai rolled out of bed, entangling himself in the sheets. Come in. The door opened to reveal the firewing from yesterday. The red Pegasus stumped his feet impatiently. Aren't you ready yet? It's nearly 9:30. Sorry. Rai shook his head to clear away the last vestiges of sleep. Anger dumped a pair of saddlebags at the foot of his bed. The Pegasus was dressed in a brown cloak, the hood draped over his head. The bright, polished armor he worn the day before was packed tightly away in his saddlebags. He grunted irritably at Rai. While you were getting your beauty sleep, I took the liberty of packing your supplies. Get those on and let's get moving. Rai nudged the saddlebags up over his head, nestling them comfortably onto his back. Ugh, what'd you put in these, rocks? Inger rolled his eyes. Some basic food supplies and a heavy cloak. You'll need it once we reach the mountain pass. Hesitantly, he added, and inside the right bag are the copies of the treaty. Rai gulped nervously. Maybe you should carry those? Inger shook his head. It is the princess's express wish that you alone carry the documents. He snorted disapprovingly. I'm sure she has her reasons. But come, let's be off. We have a long way to go. The two left the room. Inger turned to the right and Rai followed. Her Highness wants to see us before we leave. They approached the council chamber where Celestia's throne resided. The majestic alicorn was already sitting when they entered, her haunches flat against the cool gold of the throne. Rai, Inger, my faithful servants, Celestia smiled broadly, the time has come for your journey to begin. She stood and approached them solemnly. Bending her neck down, she lightly kissed each one of them on the forehead. In that regal voice she said, Go, with our blessing. Be swift, for Equestria's need is dire. We will, your majesty, Inger saluted. He turned to leave. Rai lingered, looking to the princess. He wasn't sure what to say. Don't worry, Rai, said Celestia, with a smile as warm as the sun. It's always darkest just before the sun rises. I should know. She laughed, a tinkling sound that lifted Rai's spirits. Your path will not be easy or short, but you have the courage to make it through. And always remember, your friends are your greatest strength. They will help you through the coming trials. Never forget them. Be well. The princess closed her eyes and bowed her head to him. Rai bowed as deeply as he could. Thank you, your majesty. He left the chamber, feeling overwhelmed, and yet somewhat buoyant, like he did on his birthday, or the first day of spring. He met Inger at the castle gate. It's nearly a week's journey to the pass. If we make good time today, we can pass Cottontail before sundown. Rai started suddenly with a realization. My parents! I haven't even seen them since the day before last. I need to... Inger shook his head. We can't afford any delays, Pegacorn. The princess will notify your parents, whoever they are. So he doesn't know that Windstreak is my mother. Interesting. Rai bit his lip. Okay. We've wasted enough time. Let's get moving. They walked through the city in the cool afternoon air. Ponies bustling all around them, going about their business, blissfully unaware of the dark specter of the imminent invasion. Rai looked around and took in the buildings, trying to imprint them in his memory. He never left Canterlot for more than a day or two. He wanted to remember the sights and sounds of home on the journey ahead, to keep a little piece of sanity in the crazy world he'd found himself dumped into. Inger walked ahead of him, silent. Rai wasn't sure what the Pegasus' problem was, but he hadn't said a word to Rai since they'd left the castle. Maybe it was just a quiet pony. Or maybe he's still angry about being saddled with me for this. Rai tried to work up the courage to talk to the red Pegasus, but every time he cleared his throat or opened his mouth, Inger gave him a withering glance that instantly shut him up. The two passed around the market district, avoiding the large crowd. Inger took them through a back alley that led out onto the street behind the merchant stalls, but the sounds of the bazaar still carried over the walls. They ran into the occasional drunkard passed out in an alley, snoring gently. This became a common sight as they entered the inn and tavern district of the city, nearing the gates. They found their first obstacle as they passed the back door of the Salt Lick. Two burly-looking earth ponies with a pair of cobbled-together knives gripped in their mouths blocked the road. Rai swallowed. He normally tried to avoid this part of town. With his tiny frame, he was practically asking for it. "Your money pouches, now," the bigger of the two growled around the knife. He gestured threateningly with it. Rai looked over at Inger questioningly. Inger's eyes narrowed. He only spread his legs into a fighting stance. Abruptly, he flared his wings, knocking his hood aside. Rai eyed the alleyway for escape routes. None presented themselves. Inger growled. "I don't like criminals." The two thugs hesitated. "But I don't really have time to buck your skulls into the dust, so get out of my way and I'll let you live." The smaller pony said. "Maybe we should let him go." The larger one snorted. "What's he gonna do?" He waved the knife again. "One last chance and we take it by force." He took a step forward. A fatal mistake. Inger moved like lightning, closing the distance between them and smashing his head into the thug's snout. The stunned mugger dropped the knife. "Ow! What'd you—" Inger's hoof smashed into his head from the side, sending him sprawling. Inger loomed over him, raising his hoof to stomp the thug's head into the ground. Rai cringed and shouted, "Wait!" And the guard pony paused, startled. Rai looked at the two thugs. "Get out of here, now!" They took one look at the deadly Pegasus and fled. Inger replaced his hood and continued his rapid stride. Rai trotted up to his side. They walked together without a word. Rai could tell the Pegasus was angry. "You should have let me kill him, Pegacorn," said Inger suddenly. "Now they'll just hurt some pony else." "Would killing him really have solved anything?" asked Rai, a little surprised. "They're criminals. They deserve to be brought to justice," Inger said, scowling. Rai frowned. "I'd hardly call summary execution a back alleyway justice." Inger winced. "When you put it that way—" He gave a frustrated sigh. "It doesn't matter now, anyway." He quickened his pace, moving ahead. They walked through the inn district and finally reached the gates of the city. It was almost 6 o'clock and the gates bustled with activity. Rai began to walk toward the grand opening, but Inger grabbed his cloak. "Not that way. We'll be using a small postern in the southwest section of the wall." He indicated with a nod of his head that Rai should follow. The two phonies turned to dodge the mass of incoming travelers, when Rai heard a familiar voice calling his name. "Rai! Rai! There you are! I've been looking everywhere for you!" He groaned. "Oh no, not Cranberry." Inger hissed. "Damn. I'd hoped to get out of this city without being noticed." He sighed. "No help for her now. She's seen us." The pink earth pony bounced up to them, her bushy yellow tail swishing back and forth. "Rai, where have you been? Your parents are working sick that—" She noticed Inger, jerking to a halt. "Who's this?" Cranberry, this really isn't a good time." "Rai, what's going on?" Cranberry looked worried. The red Pegasus in the cloak had an unfriendly look about him. Inger sighed. "We're on royal business. We don't have time to chat. If you'll excuse us—" He coughed at Rai. Rai looked back at Cranberry. "Look, I'm sorry, but this is really important. If you can give my parents a message—" "I can't, Rai. That's just it. I just came from the bakery. I heard your parents talking. Your mother has, Cranberry swallowed. "She'd been called to the castle for military duty." "What?" "She said something about griffins and an army. I didn't catch most of it." "Of course. The princess is preparing for the invasion. I hope you're okay, Mom." "Well, tell my family that I'm going to be going on a trip for a week or two." "A trip? What, you're leaving Canterlot?" Cranberry was starting to panic. "Right, what's happening? Where have you been the last 2 days?" "It's complicated." Staying behind Cranberry, Inger was doing his best to communicate with his eyebrows that it was time to go. Rai ignored him. "But I'm doing this at the princess's request." "Wow, the princess? You talked to Princess Celestia?" Cranberry's mouth hung a little slack. "Wait, where are you going? What are you doing for her?" "We're traveling north to Sleepnord to—" "Sleepnord?" Inger burst in. "Quiet!" He glared at Rai, turning to Cranberry. He said, "This isn't your concern, citizen. Go about your business." This conversation never happened. He planted his head on Rai's flank and shoved him forward. "Let's go." "Tell my father I'm safe," shouted Rai over his shoulder. He and the other pony vanished into the crowd. Cranberry stood still, processing everything she just learned. "Oh, Rai, what have you gotten yourself into this time?" She bit her lip. Abruptly, she came to a decision. She twisted and galloped off in the direction of the Strudel Bakery. Well, alright, so that was the end of chapter 4 and 5 that I did. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Self-promotion, rate, subscribe, all that junk. Anyway, have a great day, night, whatever the heck time it is for you.